Saving the prisoners from the Ceridium Towers come with a price, the overseer says. If you were to free all the imprisoned mages, there would no longer be a way to power the flying metal vehicles or any of the other devices that are being utilized daily by the people of Ollender. If these devices were to suddenly stop functioning, there would be chaos on the street, which would inevitably lead to a lot of death. The King of Underground knows this well, and he will not free the prisoners until he finds a suitable alternative for providing magical energy to everyone in the city. Well, if that's truly the case, then I guess I'm on nobody's side, I say. If none of you are going to even consider freeing the prisoners, then you are all my enemies. Hey now, let's not be so hasty, Darren says. We still haven't heard about the King of Ollender, what the King of Underground has to say about this. I mean, sure, he might be a little shady, but so far he has been fairly reasonable. I see no reason why we couldn't reach an agreement with him that would avoid all the bloodshed. According to the latest information I've obtained, I would say the King of the Underground may be a little less reasonable than you're expecting him to be, the overseer says. Why do you say that? Darren says. It's because I happen to have a recording of King of the Underground heavily hinting to one of his underlings that your group should be killed if you try to oppose his coronation as the King of Ollender. I recorded their conversation while I was listening to them through one of the crystals about an hour ago. Here is what the two of them said. The light from the blue crystal that the overseer was using to speak suddenly begins to pulsate a few times. 2 seconds later, we start hearing the voices of Albert and the King of the Underground echoing from the crystal. As you've instructed me, Albert says, I have already ordered some of my men to have loud conversation between each other in the more populated areas of the underground cavern, in which they are to praise your past accomplishment and talk about what a good idea it would be for you to be appointed as the new King of Ollender. This should probably be enough to get the support of most of the refugees, considering how much we have already helped them so far. Excellent, the King of the Underground said. It is important that the transition to the new regime to be done with as few dissenters as possible. The last thing we want is to have a new resistance movement form before we even take control of the city. That would be kind of funny. Resistance to the resistance. There is still the unsolved matter of the outsiders, however, Albert says. We do not know yet if they will support your ascension to the throne, even if we sell it to them as being only a temporary measure until we decide whether we want to assemble a council or not. The King of the Underground says, we should be careful to avoid directly antagonizing Darren and his group. The healer has become somewhat of a respected figure in our little underground society after everything he has done to help our people. So it would definitely hurt my image if I were to oppose him openly. That being said, we also cannot afford to risk the future of Ollender based on the whims of few people who won't have to actually live here and see the consequences of their poor decisions. If they oppose the idea of me being the ruler, we will try our best to convince them that for the time being I am the only viable option. And if they refuse to see the truth in front of their eyes, Albert says, what then? If they simply disagree with us, then we do nothing, the king says. It is not worth it to turn them into our enemies over mere difference of opinions. If they actively try to prevent my coronation, however, all I can say is that this would not be the first time when you've had to deal with a situation like this, and I expect you to solve this issue in the same manner as you've done countless times before. Efficiently? Albert asks. Discreetly, the king corrects him. Your wish is my command, my king, Albert says, and then we see the light from the crystal pulsating again, signaling the end of the recording. That backstabbing son of a trampler, Hardrick says angrily. Is this how he shows his gratitude after all we've done for him? We're ordering his loyal dog to have us murdered if he can no longer have his way. He didn't specifically say that Albert should kill us, Darren says in a somewhat hesitant tone. Seriously, Darren? It is still possible that he could just want him to bribe us or something. Seriously. He told his assassin lackey that he should solve the problems the way he always does, Kate says. Let's not try to kill ourselves. It's obvious that the King of the Underground wants him to kill us if we don't share the enlightened views of what should happen to Ollender from now on. The discreetly part probably means that he can't do it here where everyone's watching, so he would probably need to assassinate us somewhere on the surface where he could blame our deaths on the overseer or the city guard. Precisely, the overseer says. My prediction is that the King of the Underground will very soon launch an all-out attack against me in order to take complete control of the city, and he will likely enlist your aid for this operation, since you are theoretically his allies, but my calculation by my calculations, the most opportune moment of the king to betray you would be either during your battle against me or shortly before that. However, if you were to ally yourself with me instead, we could set up an ambush for the king of the underground forces, attack him together before his attempt to stab you in the back. So Hardrick says, basically you're telling us that even if we choose to ally ourselves with you, we should still agree to join the king of the underground on the trip to the surface, but we should lure him into a trap instead. That is correct, Overseer says. I do not expect you to agree with my terms immediately, of course. I will leave you some time to discuss your options between yourselves so that you can reach a proper consensus regarding this issue. According to my estimation, the king of the underground should not be able to mobilize his forces any sooner than tomorrow, so I will most likely contact you again through one of these crystals at some point in the evening. Now, if there is nothing else I can help you with, I shall take my leave. Sure, Darren says. Goodbye for now. Farewell, the Overseer says, and the crystal that he was talking through slowly stops shining with light. Well, that was informative, Darren says. So what do you guys think we should do next? I'm fine with anything as long as we get away from these crystals. We should have discussion with the rebels about who should be the next king. Yeah, that's a stupid idea. We should ask the king what he plans to do about the Ceridium Tower prisoners. Yeah, that one seems a bit more viable, because we don't necessarily have a major issue with him as long as he doesn't, fuck over those prisoners. We already killed that little girl's father, so yeah. We should ask the king what he is planning to do about the Ceridium Tower prisoners. That is a good idea, Gates says. I was actually planning to ask him this question myself the next time we would run into him. Let's head for the waiting room, then Darren says. Once we are there, we'll see if we can spot Albert or Peter so that they can tell us where the king is. So I know what I'm probably going to get ignored for asking this, Melinda says, as we are leaving our sleeping quarters. But why is everyone taking so much interest in what happens with the city after we leave? Most of you never even heard of Olinda before I first told you about it. So why would it even matter to you if this place were to get burned to ashes once we are gone, as long as we're not burning with it? That's because my character, Barry, not Thundercloud, just Barry, decided to make a bet with Aiden that he will save the entire fucking continent. That's why. Not all of us will be leaving Olinda, Luna says. Layla and Dr. Isaac are planning to move here, so they will in fact burn with the city if it turns into a flaming pile of ashes. Melinda says. That is actually a good point. I haven't thought of that. So, which side of the war are you guys planning to join then? We haven't decided yet, Darren says. Personally, I would at least like to see how the king of the Olinda would react to the proposal of another candidate to the throne before reaching a conclusion. I see, Melinda says. Well, good luck with that, I suppose. We walk towards the... Is she leaving then? Oh no, she's not. She has not given us the device yet to get the golden cone or whatever. We walk towards the waiting room for a little while until we reach a corridor that has no blue crystals on the wall at all and is entirely lit by torches. We continue to move forward without saying a word for another minute or so, until Dr. Isaac decides to finally break the silence by clearing his throat. Layla's father says, if I may, I just wanted to tell... Oh, did we find him? I don't remember finding him. Maybe they just found him, considering they pretty much took control of the entire city. If I may, I just wanted to tell you all how fascinating I found your discussion about Magium from earlier to be. As a low-ranked Lacetti, my knowledge about Magium was limited only to fairy tales, so it was most exhilarating for me to be a participant of your spirited debate, even if only as a spectator. Darren says, well, I wish I could share your sentiment, Doctor. Unfortunately for me, personally, this whole ordeal with the Magium fragments has done nothing but to cast further doubts in my mind about whether or not this prize that are offering at the end of the tournament would be of any use to me. How so? Layla's father says. Well, Darren says, I'm not sure how to tell you this, but when I first heard that they were giving us access to the Magium, I sort of assumed that I wouldn't need to jump through hoops just to understand how this access even works. At this point, I'm fully expecting the tournament organizers to just put me in front of some big blue crystal at the end and tell me that I need to use my aura to link to it or something in order to access the Magium's knowledge. If they were to say this to someone like, let's say, Azarius, I'm sure he would probably figure out what to do, but with the knowledge I have, I can't help but think that I'm a little out of depth here. Arka laughs. You only figured that out now, she says. What did you think was going to happen anyway? You figured that maybe they'd give you some trinket, all you need to do was press a few buttons to get the Magium. Is that What was going through your head when you joined the tournament? Well, yes, actually, Dylan says. What else was I supposed to think? They're offering it as a prize, aren't they? Nobody said it was a prize that could potentially end our entire world if you pissed it off too much.